Hi, my name's Phil. I'd like to talk about politics. And at the end of last week, Reform UK withdrew the party membership from their council leader in Staffordshire, Ian Cooper, because of numerous racist comments made on social media. This followed the suspension from the Welsh Parliament of Reform UK's Laura Ann Jones for using racial slurs directed at Chinese people the month before, but Farage took no action of his own against her. There have been dozens of Reform UK candidates withdrawn as a result of racist posts being made online, and we can't possibly know how many ordinary party members because that's unlikely to be accurately reported in the news. Reform UK says that it acts quickly to remove candidates when their statements fall below acceptable standards, except, of course, a couple of things to say about that. The first is they make no effort to find out if their candidates' public statements meet their standards before allowing them to become candidates. You expect the odd obscure post from years ago to maybe get missed, or something they say after they're selected and voted for. But some of their candidates are absolutely prolific with racist posts on the daily. Simply impossible to miss. So it's a case of Reform UK will not look for evidence of racism from their candidates, but if the media make a fuss, they will maybe act quickly, as they say, which shows you they care not one jot about racism, only their public image. And they won't even necessarily act quickly, even if the media do make a fuss. Case in point, Reform MP Sarah Pochin has faced no disciplinary action for her racism. The media simply didn't make enough of a fuss, maybe. And she is more valuable than a councillor to Farage. Same with a member of the Senate as well, Laura Ann Jones. Second thing to note is that there is definitely one racist within the party whose statements definitely fall below acceptable standards, who has not been suspended or booted out the party, and nor will they be. Nigel Farage himself. Farage is the Reform UK racist who absolutely cannot be kicked out. If the continuing investigation into Russian bribery doesn't land at his own personal doorstep, will his racism catch him in the pincer movement? Is his Teflon coating coming under too much pressure from double standards to maintain its integrity for a so-called man of the people? Nigel Farage has weathered reporting on his statements and past before, but that's because the media didn't really seem interested in pushing the issues. But he poses the party a problem now. Reform UK has a two-tier approach to racism, to use his own term. If you're lower down the pyramid in the party, you are easier to replace. So sacking the council leader of Staffordshire, for example, the party still controls the council, they just find another leader, no problem. If Farage were to have sacked Pochin for racism, for example, well, he'd be an MP down, again, after already having to bin two since last year. And he can't just conjure up a new MP until there are more by-elections. And as for Farage himself, he's obviously not going to sack himself. But this then allows us to observe double standards within the party. All members get away with racism as long as the media don't draw attention to it. If the media do draw attention to it, some will be disciplined, some will get away with it. The double standards could be almost as damaging to Reform UK's Nigel Farage's increasingly well-documented cases of racism. I mean, let's look at the rap sheet as it stands. So we have a detailed investigation by The Guardian this time, bringing forward allegations against Nigel Farage from his time at the private Dulwich College. Eventually, nearly 30 of his former schoolmates come forward with very specific, very disturbing claims. They allege that Farage repeatedly told a Jewish pupil Hitler was right and gassed them. Another former pupil, non-white, claims that Farage would pick on him and other minority children, asking where they were from before pointing and saying, that's the way back. These are not vague accusations of political correctness. They're specific, severe allegations of racist abuse, following the party's own supposed zero tolerance policy. You would expect a swift, decisive response, an internal investigation perhaps, or a suspension. But for Nigel Farage, the rules seem to be different. Pressed on the issue, he offered a phrase that has come to define this defence, admitting he'd not done so with intent. Not with intent. The argument isn't that it didn't happen. The argument is that if it did, there was no malice behind it. It's a defence that has been, of course, criticised. The former head of the UK's Equality and Human Rights Commission, Baroness Faulkner, described the allegations as ghastly on paper, said she was confused by his response. She said, well, why doesn't he just offer an unreserved apology for any distress caused? Politicians do that all the time. Fake apology. You know, she said, it seems to me that would be the most genuine thing to say if he's genuinely not a racist. But instead of apologies, Farage goes on the attack. He accused the media of double standards and hypocrisy. He says, oh, 1970s comedians. What about them? He has dismissed his classmates' recollections as politically motivated, despite the fact that there's no real evidence of political activity amongst them. And he stated, recollections may vary, which is a standard political cop-out when you want to lie, but you don't want to call person calling you out a liar. There's been no publicly announced internal investigation. There's no suspension, of course, no consequences. For Nigel Farage, the defence is denial, deflection, and then they claim it was all just like macho, tongue-in-cheek schoolboy banter. This is where the hypocrisy becomes hard to ignore. I mean, let's put the cases side by side. On one side, Ian Cooper is accused of posting racist content online. An investigation is launched, party membership revoked. On the other, Nigel Farage is accused by nearly 30 named and unnamed contemporaries of direct racist and anti-Semitic abuse, and we have letters from the time. Are they politically motivated? Because at the end of the day, he wasn't famous then, he wasn't a politician. We've got letters from teachers at the time calling this out. The party's response to that? Nothing. No public investigation, no sanction, denials and attacks on the media. Contrast even sharper with the case of Laura Ann Jones, Reform's only member of the Wealth Senedd. In November, just last month, Jones was suspended from the Parliament for 14 days after she used an anti-Chinese racial slur in a WhatsApp message. The Senedd Standards Committee ruled that her conduct fell far below the standards expected of an elected member. She was officially punished, but Farage's reaction didn't condemn her. Instead, he appeared on stage with her at party rallies and downplayed her offence, calling it a pretty minor offence, suggesting she'd been quite harshly punished. He claimed she used a word that colloquially was actually meant in quite a nice way 20 years ago. This is the double standard in its clearest form. A racial slur from a Senedd member is a mistake that is harshly punished. Allegations of repeated targeted racist abuse against the party leader are dismissed as banter or things that happen without intent. Creates two sets of rules. Rule one for the ordinary member: if you're caught saying something racist and it becomes a media story, that second part's important, you will be swiftly disciplined or removed to protect the party's image. Rule two, for Nigel Farage or difficult to replace members, you are untouchable. Your conduct is not up for investigation. Any and all allegations, no matter how numerous or severe, will be weathered and deflected. This selective enforcement isn't just about racism. When Nathan Gill, the former leader of Reform in Wales, was sentenced to over 10 years in prison for taking pro-Russian bribes, Farage was asked if the party would investigate. His response? He's previously argued that the party is not an investigative body. We can't do investigations. But they are apparently an investigative body for councillors who make racist posts. The party can police itself, but only when it's politically convenient. And this isn't just about party discipline. This double standards has implications for how Reform UK could be seen by the public. After anti-Semitism was allowed to run out of control in Labour, Keir Starmer went to massive efforts to give people confidence that the issue was being dealt with. More recently, Labour ministers have had to resign for some pretty petty missteps, none of which broke the law or compromised their ministries. Labour are making every effort to be ultra consistent, whiter than white from top to bottom. Reform UK are in the denial phase here. They will, of course, find the media will not hammer them as hard as they would Labour, but the Labour government itself is keen to shine a spotlight on it. If they eventually work out how to direct a communication strategy, Nigel Farage could be in a lot of trouble. It will hollow out the party's credibility on racism. A zero-tolerance policy that doesn't apply to the person in charge or other selected members isn't a policy. It's a public relations strategy. It suggests the party's actions are driven not by principle, but by managing reputational damage. Second, it sends a message about the internal culture of the party. The unwritten rule is clear. Loyalty to Nigel Farage is more important than a consistent adherence to anti-racist principles. His personal brand is protected at all costs. This fosters a culture where accountability flows downwards but never upwards. It allows a space where racial insensitivity can be excused as banter or a relic of a different time, so long as it comes from the right person. Finally, it undermines the foundation of the party's appeal. Reform UK claims to be the voice of the common people, a rejection of an out-of-touch elite who believe they are above the rules. But what could be more elitist than a system where the leader is exempt from the standards he imposes on his own members? It reveals that within this anti-establishment establishment, there is still one man who is treated as indispensable, infallible, immune to the rules that govern everyone else. Nigel Farage is clearly Reform UK's greatest asset. That is why he's so secure. But if his Teflon coating can be stripped away, he could become a liability for them. In an era where people mistrust politicians more than usual, Farage is providing lots of reasons why we really shouldn't trust him at all. Do you think the pressure of continued double standards could harm Reform UK? Let me know in the comments below. Please subscribe to the channel for more content. Click the bell notification icon so you know when new videos are coming out. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.